the hallway that was getting closer. I walked down the hallway, but it kept getting shorter. At first, I thought I was tired. That's how all of this started, really. Not with some huge moment, not with screaming, or blood, or a face at the window. Just exhaustion. Just one of those nights where your body gets home before your mind does. I live alone, on the 6th floor of an older apartment building. Not ancient, not abandoned, not creepy in any obvious way. Just old enough that the lights buzz a little, the carpet holds smells longer than it should, and the hallways feel too long after midnight. That last part matters, because when you live somewhere long enough, you know the exact shape of it. You know how many steps from the elevator to your door. You know where the dim patch of light falls near the fire extinguisher. You know which board under the carpet gives that soft dip near 6B. You stop looking, you just move. So when something changes, even slightly, you feel it before you understand it. The first time it happened, I got off the elevator around 40 inches the morning. I remember the time because I had looked at my phone just before the doors opened. I was walking back from a late shift, half awake, tie loose, keys already in my hand. The hallway was empty, normal, quiet. I stepped out, turned right, and started toward my apartment. Then, maybe 3 steps in, I slowed down. Not because I heard anything, because the hallway looked wrong, longer, not by a lot, just enough that my brain kind of tripped over it. My door looked farther away than it should have been. I stopped, blinked, looked again. Same hallway, same beige walls, same cheap lights overhead, same ugly brown carpet. So I laughed at myself, real quiet, just under my breath, and kept walking. By the time I reached my door, the feeling was gone. I unlocked it, went inside, and forgot about it. That should have been the end of it. But 2 nights later, it happened again. Same time of night, same empty hallway, same elevator, same keys in my hand. I stepped out, turned right, and started walking. This time I noticed it almost immediately. The distance felt off. My apartment was on the far end, last door on the right. I could see it, but it looked farther away than it should have been. Not in a dramatic way. It was more like the proportions were wrong. Like the hallway had stretched in my absence and hadn't snapped back yet. I stopped again. This time, I counted, under my breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. I always reach my door in 11 steps from the elevator. That night it took 14. I remember standing there with my hand on the lock, heart beating a little too fast for no reason, trying to figure out how I could have gotten something so simple so wrong. Maybe I started counting late. Maybe I was distracted. Maybe I'd never paid as much attention as I thought. All normal explanations, easy explanations. I used every one of them. Then the next night, it took 12. The night after that, 15. Then 11 again. That's when it stopped feeling like tiredness and started feeling like a pattern. I told myself I'd check in daylight. Morning always makes things smaller, less supernatural, less dramatic. So before work the next day, I left my apartment, stood in front of the elevator, and counted the steps to my door. 11. Perfectly normal. I did it twice more. Still 11. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt worse. because that meant it was only changing at night, and only when I was alone. That was the first thought that really got under my skin, not the hallway changing. The part about being alone. I didn't tell anybody. What was I supposed to say? My hallway gets longer after midnight? I already knew how that sounded, so I kept it to myself, and for a week I just watched it. Some nights it was normal. Some nights it felt too long. Then one night, it got shorter. That was worse. Way worse. I stepped out of the elevator, turned right, and looked straight at my door. It was too close. Close enough that my stomach dropped. Like a set in a movie, when the background wall suddenly moves toward the actor. I stood frozen there, keys pressed into my palm hard enough to hurt, staring at my own apartment door like it had been dragged 10 feet closer while I was gone. I actually looked back at the elevator to make sure I had come out on the right floor. 6. My floor, my hallway, my door, just too close. Then I took one step, and it got closer again. Not physically, not in a way I can explain with clean logic. It was more like the space between me and the door collapsed a little, like distance folded. I stopped breathing for a second. Everything went very quiet. No TVs through the walls, no plumbing noise, no hum from the lights, nothing. Then, slowly, one of the ceiling lights flickered, and the hallway looked normal again. My door was back where it should have been, farther away, 11 steps away. I don't remember unlocking it. I know I got inside. I know I locked every lock I had and checked the peephole 3 times before I even took my shoes off. But the walk from the elevator to my apartment is just gone in my memory, clean blank. That was the night I stopped shrugging it off. The next morning, I bought a small camera. Not a fancy one, just a cheap security camera with motion alerts and cloud recording. I set it on a shelf inside my apartment, pointed it through the peephole adapter I'd bought online months before and never used. If something was changing in the hallway, I wanted proof. The first few nights were useless. The camera showed exactly what you'd expect. Empty corridor, bad lighting, the occasional neighbor, nothing strange. Then, around 1:13 a.m. on a Thursday, I got a motion alert while I was still at work. I opened the app in the break room. The hallway was empty, but the camera had triggered. I watched the 10-second clip 3 times. Nothing moved. Nothing entered the frame. Just fluorescent hum and grainy shadows. Then I noticed something subtle. At the very end of the clip, the perspective changed. Only a little. The hallway looked shorter. I scrubbed back and forth with my thumb. The walls hadn't moved, exactly. The image hadn't zoomed, but somehow the end of the corridor looked nearer in the last second than it had in the first. That was impossible. I played it again. Same thing. I saved the clip. That night, I got home around 12:50. I stayed inside the elevator after it opened, just watching the hallway, waiting to see if it would happen while I wasn't in it. Nothing. My floor looked normal, so I stepped out. 1 step, fine. 2 steps, fine. 3 steps. The hallway got shorter. It happened instantly, like a breath drawn in. My apartment door jumped closer. The fire extinguisher cabinet slid subtly into a new position along the wall. The far light seemed brighter because it was suddenly nearer. I swore, loud enough that it echoed. Then I heard something I hadn't heard before. Footsteps. Not mine. Soft. Ahead of me. I stopped immediately. The footsteps stopped too. The hallway was empty. I stood there a long time, staring down that narrowed corridor, waiting for something to move, something to explain itself. Nothing did. Then the nearest ceiling light blinked once, twice, and the hallway stretched back out again. Longer. Normal. Empty. I ran to my door that time. Didn't care how stupid I looked. I got inside, locked everything, and stayed with my back against the door until my breathing stopped sounding like panic. After that, I stopped trusting the space outside my apartment. I started timing my arrivals, trying to come home before dark. When I couldn't, I took the stairs instead of the elevator, as if changing one route would somehow change what was waiting at the other end. It didn't. The hallway still changed, and it started doing more than just changing length. It started reacting. The best way I can explain it is this. It began to notice me noticing it. If I stared too long, the lights would flicker. If I hesitated at the elevator, the far end would darken. If I walked quickly, the hallway seemed to shorten faster, like it was trying to meet me halfway. And if I stopped completely, sometimes something moved at the end. Not a person, not clearly, just a shape where a shape shouldn't be, darkness holding together too well, a vertical form, slightly taller than a man, just standing there where the perspective collapsed into grain. The first time I saw it, I told myself it was a trick of the lights. The second time, I told myself it was a neighbor in dark clothes. The third time, it raised its head. Not much, just enough, and I knew I was lying to myself. Around then, the dream started. Same dream, over and over. I'd step out of the elevator onto my floor and the hallway would be gone, replaced by a much longer corridor, one that didn't fit inside the building I knew. Same walls, same carpet, same cheap lights, but stretched impossibly far, bending slightly at the end so I couldn't see where it stopped. My door would still be there, far away, and every time I tried to walk toward it, the hallway would shorten, then lengthen, then shorten again, like it was breathing. And every time, there was someone at the far end, waiting, not blocking the way, just waiting. I'd wake up before I reached my apartment, always. One Sunday night, I decided I was done being scared of a hallway. That's the stupid kind of confidence people get right before everything gets worse. I came home with groceries, dropped them in the kitchen, and marched right back out into the corridor with my phone in one hand and the camera app open. I stood by my door and pointed the phone straight down the hallway. "Do it," I said, quietly at first. Then louder. "Do it again." Nothing. The hallway stayed normal. I remember feeling embarrassed, angry, too, at myself, at the building, at the stupid amount of fear I'd let grow around something I couldn't even explain properly. Then the app on my phone buzzed. Motion detected, but not from the peephole camera, from the camera in my living room. I frowned and opened the alert. The clip showed my apartment interior, empty, still. Then, in the last second, a shadow crossed my front door from the inside. I didn't understand what I was seeing at first. Then I turned around. My apartment door was closed, locked. and something tapped the other side of it from inside my apartment. 3 slow taps. I don't remember unlocking the door. I know I did it. I know I rushed in. Every room was empty. The groceries were still on the counter. Windows shut. Closet shut. Bathroom empty. But from that night on, the hallway didn't stop at my door anymore. That's the part that really broke me. Before, it changed outside. After that, it started bleeding in. Small at first. My front entry felt longer when I came home. The stretch from the door to the kitchen seemed a little off, a little too deep. Then my bedroom hall started changing too. One night I got up to use the bathroom and the distance from my bed to the door felt doubled. I stood there in the dark, hand on the frame, staring at the bathroom light spilling across a floor that felt too far away. Then the light blinked, and the distance shortened. I stopped sleeping much after that. I started leaving lights on. I kept the TV running, just for noise. Silence made it worse. Silence seemed to help it, and the camera began recording things I couldn't explain. Not jump scares, not clear ghosts or faces. Worse, subtle changes. A hallway that looked longer at 211 than it had at 210. A light fixture appearing slightly closer to the camera between frames. My own front door shifting left, then right, like the geometry around it wasn't fixed. Then, one night, at 3:04 a.m., the camera caught the end of the hall shortening while something stood there. It didn't walk forward. It didn't need to. The space closed around it until it was suddenly nearer. Its shape stayed dark, featureless, but its outline sharpened with distance collapsing around it. Long arms, narrow shoulders, head angled too low at first, then lifting. It was looking at my door, at me. I watched that clip until sunrise. The next day, I took a measuring tape into the hallway. Yes, really. That's where I was by then. I measured from the elevator to my door. 32 feet. Then I measured again at night. 32 feet. And again, after midnight. Still 32. That should have been comforting. Instead, it made it worse. Because if the hallway wasn't actually changing, then it was only changing for me. Which meant one of two things. Either I was losing my mind, or the hallway was choosing when to be real. I don't know which explanation scared me more. Then came the night I stopped using the elevator. I got off work late, took the stairs all 6 floors, and pushed through the stairwell door expecting relief. But my hallway was already waiting, shorter than it had ever been. My apartment door looked maybe 4 steps away. I could have reached it in seconds. Except something stood between me and it. Not fully formed, more like a patch of dark that held the shape of a person. It stood in the center of the corridor under the flickering light, not moving, not hiding. I backed into the stairwell and slammed the door. My phone buzzed again. Motion detected. I looked at the screen. The peephole feed showed the hallway. Empty. No figure. No distortion. Just my apartment door at the far end where it should have been. Then, slowly, in the center of the frame, the perspective changed. The hall got shorter, and from the very end, in one impossible fold of space, the dark shape appeared all at once, closer than it had any right to be. It was standing right outside my door, facing the camera. I think that's when I started understanding what was really happening. It wasn't just the hallway changing, it was the distance between me and it. That was what kept collapsing. Not the building, not the measurements, the space between us. Like the hallway was deciding how far away danger was allowed to be. And every night, that answer changed. One Tuesday, I came home and found my apartment door already open a few inches. No sign of forced entry, no broken lock, just open. Inside, everything looked untouched. But the hallway beyond the living room, the one leading to my bedroom, looked longer. I stood in my own apartment staring down a corridor that could not possibly fit inside the square footage I paid for. The lights there buzzed faintly. At the end, my bedroom door stood half open. And I knew, with a kind of certainty that doesn't need proof, that if I walked toward it, it would get closer. Not my bedroom. Something else. I backed out. Closed the front door, locked it, stayed in a hotel that night. The next day, I came back for clothes. The apartment was normal again. Mostly. Except the peephole camera had a final clip. No motion alert this time. Just a saved recording at 3:17 a.m. The hallway was visible. Empty. Then the perspective shortened. The space collapsed, and instead of my door at the end, there was another hallway. Longer, darker, bending out of sight. No apartment, no elevator, no 6th floor. Just a corridor that seemed to go on forever. At the very edge of the frame, halfway swallowed by darkness, something moved. Not toward the camera. Not away, just enough to make me understand the truth. It wasn't trying to get into my apartment. It had already done that. And it wasn't trying to reach me. It already had. What it wanted, whatever it was, wasn't me. It was the distance itself. The waiting. The narrowing. That slow, impossible certainty that safety is only a shape space makes before it changes its mind. I moved out 3 days later. New building, new city almost. No long corridors, no peephole camera, no 6th floor, nothing that looked remotely like that place. And for a few weeks, I thought I'd won. No strange lights. No wrong distances, no dark shapes at the end of hallways. Then, last night, I got off the elevator in my new building. 2nd floor, much smaller place, cleaner, brighter, no old carpet smell, no buzzing lights. I stepped out, looked toward my apartment, and stopped, because my door looked too close. Only by a little, but enough. I took one step, and the hallway got shorter. Then the lights flickered, and somewhere ahead of me, in a space that used to be empty, something waited. It wasn't a hallway anymore.